So let's talk about this little monster then that they brought out, and this is kind of interesting because it's like, is it targeted at photographers? Like, it's at the top end for sure, but I think that there are going to be still shooters that will use this. And look, you've got to remember that rental houses are going to have this anyway. So if you're in there renting panels or whatever, especially for a production, then you're going to be able to rent this. Something like this is going to be what, 75 quid a day or something like that. So doable. But this is interesting because remember the previous single point head that we had from Profoto was this one here, right? So 1600 watts, just daylight, 5700 I think it said. Yeah, $9,000. You may or may not remember, but this also has the ability for S-fit attachments on the front here as well. So not only does it have the Profoto head attachment on the front, but you can also put S-fits on the front here as well. They haven't brought that across to this. Okay, so that was one of the first things I noticed. It's like, I was kind of interested. I was like, ooh, you've got S-fit on the Big Brother. Is this going to have S-fit? No, it doesn't. So this is only going to be Profoto modifiers. And look, from Profoto's point of view, like, we already have tons of modifiers. Again, it's probably going to be in a rental house. Not the end of the world. You're just going to use the modifiers that are there. But it's worth noting that this is definitely not S-fit, only Profoto. Okay. So let's kind of look at some of the specs on this thing, because there's a lot to cover with this one that I thought was pretty interesting. So let's get one of the big ones out of the way first, and that is the triple white LED chip that's in there. So those of you who don't know, many RGB heads at the moment are RGB WW, right? And even most Kelvin range heads that aren't RGB are WW. What does that mean? So basically it means it's got two white chips in there, right? Two white LEDs. And by white, I mean one is very warm, at the lower end of the Kelvin range, like 4,000 or something. And another one is very cold up at the, 5,000, 7,000 range, right? And then when these two LEDs are turned on and mixed, that's where you can have your Kelvin range, right? Now, there's, benefits to that, of course, is that with this with these two LEDs in there, you can do a bunch and have a wider range and that sort of thing. But it does also mean that you're kind of restrictive on power, right? So when most of these companies test their Kelvin range heads, it's usually around 5600 Kelvin, because that's when both of the white LEDs are on pretty much at max power, right? So when both of these LEDs are on, that's when you're getting the brightest part of the light. Now, if you turn it down to like 3000 Kelvin or something like that, you've only really got the warm LED on, and then you have less power. Same at the top end of like 7,500 or something like that, you only have one LED on, a lot less power because you only have the one on. Okay, so this triple LED is kind of interesting. Yeah, kind of interesting. Yeah. So let's say here, very warm is usually 2,500, cold is usually 6,500, more recently 9,000 LEDs. So let's just bring up the Kelvin range here a second. I mean, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We just need to. Yeah. So Kelvin, right, is what we know. It's like down here we got your candlelight and your tungsten bulbs, right, and then up here you got your flash, like your kind of your noonday sun, kind of almost white light, and then we go into kind of the afternoon light and kind of the top ends, in terms of kelvins, right? So what these guys are doing is they've added 4 chips, right? So they're bringing one in at 1700, which is kind of way down here, right? They're bringing another chip in at 4,000, right, which is kind of in here, and they're bringing another one in at 9,000, which is here. So this is doing multiple things, right? This is doing multiple things, which, like, and this is not going to be relevant to everybody. I use Kelvin a huge amount in my work, so I kind of notice it a lot. but the power fluctuations that you get is a pain in the ass, right? So with 3 chips, you're going to get far less power fluctuations, really, right? It's going to be far more even across the board. So if we're down here at like the 3000 range, we're going to be using both of these. So you're going to have a lot of juice. If we're up here at like 5600, we're going to be using both of these. You're going to have a similar amount of juice. So it's going to be far cleaner in terms of power, right? Now, the other really important thing here is that most LEDs are like, what is the bottom end of like a regular Kelvin light here? Let's have a look. I've actually got the old Godox heads here. So yeah, so we got the so this is the old the Godox LED head that I was testing the other week, right? So we got 2800 up to 6500, right? So not a massive range, not a massive range. And then what are these doing? This has a range of, I think, what, 2000 up to 9000 or something like that, 10,000. I can't see the. Oh, here we go. 2000 to 15,000, right? So that's their range, and that is pure Kelvin, pure white light. So what do I mean by that? Well, one thing that we kind of noticed in the previous review back here, Godox has these 2 heads, right? They have an RGB head and they have a Kelvin head, right? The bicolor head, which is cheaper, right? So this is the bicolor head here. That's the Kelvin range, right? And then this is the RGB head. That's the Kelvin range, right? So the bicolor head is 28 to 65, and then the RGB is 18 to 10,000. Now, there is no way that the RGB has more Kelvin in it than the designed bicolor head. So what manufacturers are doing, and this is, I'm not just calling out Godox on this, a lot of them do it, is that they will cheat the Kelvin range with RGB, right? So when we get down here, so when we go beyond 2800 in this RGB head, what that's doing is it's just turning on the red LED, right? So it's no longer relying on the white chips, it's turning on the red LED, and it could be the same at the top end. So as soon as this head goes above 6,500, it's going to turn on the blue LED, right? Now, this may not seem like a big deal, and it's not for most people, but when we're talking about color consistency and color variations, it is a big deal. Especially at the bottom end. I mean, look, okay, granted, I've been doing this a long time, so fair enough, but I did notice it, which is why I was questioning it on this head. I never got an answer, but I was like, are you using the red, green, and blue to access this Kelvin? Because it wasn't rich, like a strong, rich Kelvin chip would be. And they're able to do that. Now, this is, again, really important for cinematographers who want that incandescent look, right? So I've mentioned this before, but, movies with kind of infinite budgets on set will still use tungsten heads, like actually use like tungsten heads on set, because it gives this beautiful, rich, incandescent look on the skin. And Vlad and I have spoken about this in the past. I couldn't find the video that I wanted to show you that actually talks about the color curve, but incandescent lights have a beautiful color curve with no real major troughs or dips. If you try and replicate that with LEDs, it has these troughs, gaps essentially in the color, right? And this is why cinematographers with seemingly infinite budgets still use 50-60-year-old tungsten heads, because of that richness of color. What this triple white chip is doing is trying to dig into that rich incandescent, really rich warm color with that targeted 1700 Kelvin chip that they've made there, that's just targeting that bottom end. Now, again, I haven't tested this, I don't know, but looking at it, it looked good, right? It looked good, on the skin and that sort of thing. So I would love to see, I know it only goes down to 2000 here because it has to dip into the power of the other chips as well. But at 2000 Kelvin, I would love to see how that stands up to incandescent bulbs, because again, I think that is kind of something very interesting that they're kind of looking at, and kind of a gap that they're looking to address with that third chip. So fair play to them. Fair play to them. And of course, what that does mean is that you end up with record-breaking color ranges, right? 99. Now the typical is 97. Again, super nerdy. 97 is the norm, but they because of this extra chip, they're able to get that color consistency up to 99, which is kind of wild. Which is kind of wild. And I haven't seen any others being up there at 99. Are they saying that 100 is actual incandescent? I wonder. Yeah. So 9000 is stupidly blue. Is only going to be, even if they measure the caliber of the stuff, Profoto will probably do it. Yeah, I would need to do it. I would need to see for myself, but I guarantee you that's going to be more even than just 2 chips anyway. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. I got 1700K bulbs from Lidl. They got super low brightness, atmospheric and nice. Interesting, yeah. 1700. That's crazy, man. Yeah. Damn, what is that burning? That's just like, is that just a bonfire in a glass bulb? Is just a bowl that you light and just hang? Like 1700 is super warm, man. Yeah, it's actually just a fire. Yeah. Oh, it's LED. Interesting. Okay. Super low. Yeah. Okay. We got Lidls here actually. I might see if I can find one. Yeah. Good shout. I'll have a look. Yeah. So look, LEDs that flash. So this head will flash as well, right? Now, there's not much mention of this anywhere in the press, right? They're kind of keeping this pretty quiet. And look, I think in all fairness, it's because they don't want to be kind of competing with the flash side of their business, right? I don't think they want to be competing with, because like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a different team, right? And I'm almost convinced it's a different team, right? So the guys working on the strobes, very different to the cinema guys that Profoto has just opened up here with Rod, and I think they're just like, look, let's just kind of keep the two things separate. But this has the tech in it to flash, right? And that's flash at any of those Kelvin ranges I've just spoken about, and flash at any RGB value, and it's a single point COB. This is the first one in the world that does this. Flash full RGB with a single point COB that you can modify like this. Like, this is the first one. And they're not talking about it. So this is why you're not really going to see it in the press anywhere. Like, I don't think it mentions it here, right? They're just not talking about it because it's not the market that they're going for. But the technology is out there, and I'm really, really interested to see what this looks like tech-wise. You know, like what is the flash like? Is it viable? Is it bright enough? Can you use it? I just saw at the top there was questions. I was like, I wonder what people are asking. But anyway. So yeah, like, it's interesting, man. It's interesting. Yeah, the fact that it's in there and they're kind of keeping quiet about it is kind of wild. Yeah. So high speed sync as well. You know, LEDs, easy to high speed sync. Works with the Profoto air receiver, right? So you just go into the light itself. And I shot a video and shared it, on my stories last week. But you go into like the back end of the light in the menu system, and you go in, and as soon as you access the Profoto air receiver, the flash is on, right? And that's it, right? Now let's have a look at something else here. So we got the Fresnel, looks 1 meter color space. Let's have a look at the output here a second. Let's open this one, turn this one down. So here we're in the percents, right? We're in the LED, and then he's going to go. I think he's going to go in there. Is it in this video? Yeah, I think he goes into it here. He might go into it here. No, that's a different one. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second because that's really important as well. I don't know whether it's there. Is this one? Boom, here we go. Okay, so this is the one. So you're going into the menu of this head, right? go into the mode and you come down to Profoto Air, right? Straight away, we're into the flash mode here. Now, one thing that I immediately notice is it switches over to stops of power as opposed to percents, which is so fucking good, right? So no longer are we guessing, like, oh, because I'll shoot an image and I'll go, oh, I need, oh, that's actually a little bit dark. I need like an extra stop of power. And on LEDs, like that's, if you're like at 80%, like an extra stop of power could be 18%, right? But if you're already at like 15%, an extra stop of power could be like 8%. Right, so you're just kind of guessing with the percents. But as soon as you switch this Profoto head into flash mode, it switches straight back to stops, right? Which is so good. So it means that if you're on here, you know, you're at 9 and you go, right, oh, it's a stop too bright, you just tick it down to 8 and that's exactly a stop less of power, right? Super useful, especially for speed on set. Very, very useful. Yeah. Through it, it looks like filaments. Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know it's Romanian, but you can read the specs. 800 is super common around here for bulbs at this one. Jesus, yeah, no, it's not here. Actually saw the bulb in action using it in the background a lot of my vids. Oh, okay, yeah, it's like super warm then. Yeah. So we can see that we're in the flash mode here with the little flash symbol there, lightning bolt thing there. Yeah, and you notice the draw here at the top. So it tells you the power as well, the draw on the unit, right? So we're at 9 here. This readout is super useful because it actually tells you how much power you're using when you've set the power of the back of the light. So remember, this is a 600 watt head, right? So we're at 9 stops of power here, 10 being the max. And we know that 1 stop of power is, we need like 1 stop of light is double the power, right? So to get up to 10, we're only using 300 watts of this 600 watt head at the moment, but to get to 10, we have to double the power, which takes us up to 600 watts. So it's like, it's giving you the readout of what it is. Like, super useful for me. I think that's like awesome. A really simple thing, but having the readout like that, and it really helps you to understand like the power drain, right? So even at 9, we're only using half the power of this head. To get 1 more stop of power you need so much juice to do it. Double the effective power of your head each time you go up 1 stop is crazy. Right. Now, one thing that was interesting, I didn't kind of mention about the B20s and B30s there. They have 11 stops of range of power, which is actually really impressive. 11 stops range is crazy. Yeah. So Steve came in here. So it can't flash at 2x power. Great question, Steve. So what Steve's referring to there is the rotor lights, right? So I mentioned like earlier on in the stream, I said, look, I'm using the rotor lights, and what they do is they overclock the actual light itself for a split second to give you that extra juice, right? And this is what Steve's picking up on here. He's saying, so it's not doing that in the flash mode. So that is a great question, and I don't think it is. I would need to check it, but I don't think it is. Whether they thought, look, you know, we don't want to damage the chip. We want to keep it clean. We want to keep the readout so that it's actually legit. We don't want it to read 1200 when you're set to 10 or something like that. But it's a great question, Steve, and something that I would need to check. But I'm guessing no. I'm guessing no. So the rotor lights will overclock. Now, whether that's because you're doing it in a panel as opposed to a single, COB that's having to do all that work at once, don't know. But a great question that I would love to find out. Yeah. So here we're just seeing the back to the power outputs and the flashes and that sort of stuff. Let's close that down. Okay. So Profoto mount, I've already spoken about that. No SFIT, bit of a shame, but yeah. So this entire unit, in terms of weight, so you may not have picked up on it, but there's no ballast or control box or anything else coming out of that head. It's an enclosed unit, right? And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the only head of this power, 600 watt, that doesn't have the ballast on the outside, right? It's all enclosed in this head. And for the entire thing to be 6 kilos, like I got strobes here that are heavier than that, hands down, easily, hands down. Now, granted, the battery is, you know, obviously the battery weight is doing that. This is not battery; it's plugged into the wall. So, but still, I still have monoblocks here that weigh more than 6 kilos, for Christ's sake. So to have all this juice and it all be encased in one unit like this. Now, one of the reasons they're doing that is this is liquid cooled, right? So you basically have one fan in there that you can't hear, and it's just moving air around. It's not that's not what's cooling this unit. Is the liquid cooling is cooling this unit, which means that you don't have to have that ballast outside that's generating heat and all that sort of stuff. You can do away with that. You can have a purely encased unit, so no fan noise, right? Liquid cooled. You don't have like the control box. I know some people like the control box to control it down here, but with the app and that sort of stuff, it's, you know, less of an issue. So this is a purely encased unit, 6 kilos, no dangling control box, which drives the fucking hell out of me. And this thing was on. It's been on the whole time I was at the show, and I was holding it at the front there. And I mean, sure, it's warm, but it wasn't hot. Like, it wasn't hot. Not even close to being like not even close. So, you know, and it's inside. It wasn't a cold room. So like the liquid cooling that they've got in there is doing work. It's a 600 watt head. And again, like no fan noise, like video. It's nuts. It's crazy. The liquid cooling is really going to help those guys with fan noises. It's nuts. Yeah. So again, very, very impressive. Yeah. So liquid cooled, no ballast. Talking about that silent running, speaking about that as well. So the brightness, they're saying 140,000 lux at 1 meter. That's bright. That is bright. And again, are you thinking, well, Jake, that doesn't make sense, 600 watts, and that's something you got to remember. It's kind of different. This is, you know, different to a 600 watt panel or something like that. This is all coming from a single point. So that is being focused at 1 meter, right? So all of that 600 watts is being channeled at 1 meter. But that is bright. That is bright. So whatever they're doing with the tech in there to push it out the tube, it's definitely working. Yeah. Clean simple menus. Easy enough, right? And we understand that. We've already spoken about that. And especially for any Profoto user, it's exactly the same control system. So it's all going to be exactly the same, right? Very easy. Color space menu. So again, talking about the color spaces, it has all that in there. You can dictate the dictate color spaces, right, of what you're going to be working in. Like the X and Y was pretty cool. I don't normally use it. I don't know how often I would use it, but so you have there you go, you see it up there. So you have the kind of, the reason I'm taking this image is because it's underexposed up there, so you can actually see the color triangle. But yeah, so you can kind of see the X and Y axis. The other thing with this RGB head is that whatever you are changing the power to, I'll just play this here, it's telling you the watt output as well. So as a nerd, as a color nerd, I was fascinated. I was changing the color, and it shows you kind of the watt output, right? So that this right hand dial always affects the power, and then the left hand dial is always going to be affecting the color here. So you have your color spectrum, you choose the color you want in that spectrum, and then you're also getting the readout up here of the draw, right? So here, for example, that's kind of interesting if you're a nerd. So here, so we're at 100% power, but we're at 425 watts, and that's because we're using, you know, only certain chips, right? We're only using certain color chips. We're not using, so what are we up there, you know, with the green and the blue here, so we're not using as much of the red chip, so we're only accessing, you know, like 2/3 of the power, right? So, you know, it's giving you the power readout as well. Again, kind of useful for understanding exposure and kind of building your visual language. I think, look, that is super nerdy, but I thought that was, yeah, like the fact that I can dial into a color and go, okay, this is the kind of power that I'm getting from that, not just the color itself, because you know how much exposure affects color. Super useful to be able to do this, right? So you can go, I want the same blue over here, like I want the same kind of teal color over here, and I want the same kind of purple color over here, right? So one thing you'd kind of do is you kind of looking at, okay, so this teal was kind of 425 watts. Let's look at this, you know, purpley color over here that's having a similar value, and that's going to give you a similar kind of exposure. So really working on that dominant and recessive colors, I would find that super useful. Yeah. So again, similar things that we had in the panel with the current draw, right? So it's telling you, I just spoken about that, and then the output limiter. So you can go, right, let's make this a 300 watt head. We don't want to we don't want to kill the room, or like, you know, the wall plug or anything like that. So you can limit it like that. 16-bit dimming, it just means that it's very, very clean, right? Like the color curves or whatever, like the dimming curves that they call it. So Rod used an example of, if you wanted like a black, like fade to black with video, you can kind of basically set the gearing of the brightness to be very, very clean at the bottom end. So 16-bit dimming just means that it's, you can't see it stepping down. AC power, you can plug it straight into the wall if you wanted to. Profoto app, build quality with regards to the polycarbonate body, so no metal, which is obviously keeping the weight down. It seemed very, very sturdy. And again, we have that very rubberized rear that we saw with the B20s and B30s earlier on. It seemed like a very well built unit. And then kind of all the sockets are kind of underneath it, you know, so when it's up high, everything plugs in, so it's all nice and out the way, and it's not in your face when you're moving it and that sort of thing. So it's been designed really, really well. Very, very clean. Honestly, all we seem to want nerds is so the actual logic's just temperatures to turn, lights up and down. Honestly, we seem to want nerds is so actual. You mean the actual color meter thing that you've been talking about, Vlad? So I'm just going to wrap this up here. This is brand new for Profoto, and I was like, oh, you know, can I see it flash? It's like, well, we don't have the app to fire it yet. You need the trigger. You got to remember that Profoto has never released an RGB light before, so their app has no RGB color wheel or any of that kind of software or in the app, right? It's just it was crazy to me that, like, you got to understand that Profoto doesn't even have a color wheel in their app, because they've never dealt with color in their app before. This is the first time. So look, yes, this light has been announced, but there's a few things that need to be kind of brought up to date, namely like the app, so that you can fire everything and use the flash and all that sort of stuff from the app, and adjust all the colors and that sort of thing from the app, which they're obviously doing. And look, Rod said that he's going to try and get me a copy of this light out to test, which I will be very excited to see. This is like, we've seen a lot of LEDs over the years, right? The last couple of years especially, and this one, like, is a lot of money, but it's doing a lot. It is doing a lot, and I think that if you're somebody that's going to use that for video, a lot of these features in here are like for video, but it's a serious bit of kit, man, and I would love to see, you know, some of these features being seen everywhere, you know, because they're very, very useful. So, you know, sure, this is probably a hybrid light. This is probably the only light that is probably going to have some stills shooters using. I can't see many stills shooters using the panel unless they shoot stills as well as video. But yeah. Let's see. Like I said, Rod said he was going to try and get me one. None of these lights are available. Like, this is just a prototype here as well. None of these lights are going to be available until July, testing wise and that sort of thing. So, look, fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. If I could get hold of one and kind of test some of the things that you guys have mentioned and queried, I would certainly be very interested to see what it can do, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they did say that I can't have any photographs of oily bums or anything like that, but, you know, I'll keep it PG-13, I promise.